Good morning, everyone. I think probably most of you don't follow me on Instagram, X, or Facebook. I've been posting quite a few thoughts and opinions about my sequel to the 1987 romantic comedy Can't Buy Me Love, which I've named Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer. It's been a while since I have done a video here. And again, so if you don't follow me on those other social platforms, I'm just going to share with you the posts I've done lately, and I think you'll find them interesting. And I do hope that maybe it'll spur you on to want to get a copy of my book. All right, so the very first one I've done lately was around March 29th. The love triangle between Ronald Miller, Cindy, and Patty is very interesting to say the least. In Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, it keeps you guessing. I don't really include Barbara, the first person whom Ronald dated besides Cindy, until the last chapter of the book. Patty is full of mischief and often impulsive when Cindy is mostly grounded. But even Patty matures and changes in her college years while dating Ronald. And Patty was played by the beautiful Darcy DeMoss, if some of you remember her or if you're a fan of hers. All right. Let's see. Then the next one I think I'll share. If you're like me and find mosaics really beautiful, and I especially like mosaics in Greece, you might find my story, Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, like a mosaic with all the bits and pieces and vignettes that I've sprinkled in to form a nice sequel novel to the movie Can't Buy Me Love. Perhaps I should put it another way since I've referred to mosaics as beautiful. Maybe a collage is a better way to put it. I'll leave the opinion of beautiful up to all of you, the readers, rather than to myself. All right. The last lawnmower ride that Ronald and Cindy took in Can't Buy Me Love at the end of the movie. It was a welcome surprise, especially since it seemed that they might be headed off to separate lives. As they rode off into the sunset, it struck me that this was only the beginning. So I offer to you my sequel novel, Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, The College Years of Can't Buy Me Love. It was published in January 2025, and you can't find it on, and you can find it on many vendor platforms, including Amazon. The setting in Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer takes place only briefly in the original hometown of Ronald, Cindy, and Patty. That was Tucson, Arizona. It is largely based in LA and remote West Texas, where they are attending college. Then, impulsive Patty, always full of surprises, announces to Ronald that she is spending a semester in Sevilla, Spain, and she spurs him on to follow her. But Patty's decision to do a long weekend trip to Morocco, that is, when they're both over there in Spain, that's a bridge too far for practical Ronald. When Ronald refuses to go with her, she tells him that she thought he was practically her twin and that a trip to Morocco would do him good. That in itself is hilarious because the idea of them being twins could not be further from the truth. By the end of the story, everyone is back in the USA. Okay, it made sense to me that when Ronald Miller went off to college, astronomy would be his major, just like it made sense that Cindy Mancini would study journalism since she loved to write in her spare time, but was ashamed to tell her friends about that except for Ronald. When I first started writing the sequel to Can't Buy Me Love, I knew I wanted to send the characters to another country for part of their college experience. I really loved and still love Greece and thought that would be terrific. However, I decided against that because in that scenario, I had Ronald majoring in Greek as a reason for his desire to study over there. That just didn't sound like the Ronald Miller that we fans of the film know so well. Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, check out Ronald, Cindy, and Patty's 4 years of college, both in the US and in Spain. I now pay for my own copies of the book Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer just like anyone else. My contract only allowed for one free book. I decided to get a new copy last week. Over the last 14 to 15 months, I have made some revisions to the story, so I thought it would be good to have a copy which is strengthened through all those improvements. My last revision was a long time ago. I just dragged my feet and did not order a new copy until now. And I will say that when I did get a copy of the book, one of the revisions that I asked them to make, which they told me they would make, has not been made yet. So I've contacted them again about that. Let's see here. I am looking forward to hearing from those of you who have purchased Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer Low these past 14 months since it hit the presses. I leave the story open to a sequel toward the very end of the novel, but I'm not sure it really needs one. Between the film Can't Buy Me Love and its follow up with 4 years of college, I think the story ends right where it needs to. However, you be the judge. If you've seen the musical Cats, I'm sure you'll agree that it has a lot of vignettes, but none of them really flow together in one cohesive, coherent plot. Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer actually also has a lot of vignettes, but they do come together for one clear plot. If you're like me, you prefer that outcome. In Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, the chapters where Ronald, Patty, and even Cindy spend a semester in Sevilla, Spain are fun because it introduces you to some brand new characters. American college students, many of these college students are headstrong and full of mischief. It also introduces you to the American director of their overseas program. She is both charming and very eccentric. In Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, there are some interesting episodes where Ronald and Patty experience the Marfa Mystery Lights in the light sky. And these Marfa Mystery Lights really do exist in a small town called Marfa, Texas. That's Marfa. Also, in that chapter, they also experience the International Chili Cook-Off in Terlingua Ghost Town, Texas. That also exists. It's an annual chili cook-off. Cindy, for her part, gets an interesting summer job in Los Angeles writing for a local magazine. These are just a few of the vignettes which continue the romantic comedy of Can't Buy Me Love. Lawn Boy Turn Astronomer is 237 pages long. However, you can get through it fairly quick, as the type size is a little larger than what you might expect. I hear from a lot of companies wanting to help promote my book, but all of them want to charge me money, so it's my preference to do it myself. I even got an offer to do a cable TV interview for $110. I think it was around there. It was at least 100. However, when I looked into it further, it was really more of an infomercial than an interview, and it looked like few people would actually see it. I enjoyed all the humor and laughs in the original Can't Buy Me Love. My sequel novel, Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, is heavy on telling a story, but it doesn't disappoint with some laughs, including when you're not expecting them. Let's see, after my book, Lawn Boy Turned Astronomer, had been out for a while, one of my publisher's employees wanted me to bring the story up to the 21st century. However, I have seen many great sequels ruined because they attempted to bring everything up to date, mainly because the original spirit is lost that way. So, since Can't Buy Me Love took place in 1987, I decided that the college years would logically span from 1988 to 1992, and they should hold true to what life was like at that time in history as a sequel. And that brings us pretty much up to date. I posted that last comment yesterday. So it was good to talk to you until the next time. And as I said, I hope that you may be interested in getting a copy and that you'll enjoy it. Bye.